Welcome to the UP Notable Books Club, brought to you by the Upper Peninsula Publisher and Authors Association. Peter Wurdock's journey is a captivating blend of artistic endeavors and deep connections to the landscape of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. From his roots in Royal Oak, Michigan, to his studies in creative writing and music at Albion College and Berklee College of Music, respectively, Wurdock's path has been rich with diverse experiences. His career took him through the vibrant world of music in Nashville before he rediscovered his passion for writing later in life. Through his articles and books, Wurdock intertwines prose and photography, offering readers a unique glimpse into the beauty and nostalgia of the Upper Peninsula. His accolades, including the Upper Peninsula Notable Book Award and the title of Upper Peninsula Laureate of Luce County, speaks to the impact of his work. Wurdock's 6 books showcase his versatility as a writer, blending fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, along with his beautiful photography. Living in Newberry with his 2 adopted greyhounds, Petie and Meerah, Wurdock continues to draw inspiration from his surroundings, crafting stories that resonate with readers and capture the essence of Michigan's rugged beauty.
And it is my pleasure to have Pete with us. This was, I kind of enjoyed this book because, well, I'm just going to say it. Very, very selfishly, being very selfish.
What do you mean you kind of enjoyed it?
Well, I'm getting to this. So I enjoyed it. And this is why I enjoyed it. And I don't like to admit this to people because people get mad at me for saying it. But being a librarian and having 1,000 books I want to read, plus all the books people tell me to read, I've got a very long TBR list. And when I come across a book under 100 pages, I salivate with joy. I am telling you, it makes me happier than happy when I can read something in an hour because, you know, I'm up against, one book club is doing Dracula and the Count of Monte Cristo, and that's like 1,000 pages right there. Not to mention all the other clubs I'm in. So thank you, Pete, for this.
Well, I too work at a library here in Newberry, the Quamanon area public schools library. We've been closed for the summer due to finally getting some renovations, which have been long overdue.
I don't.
But yeah, I think people are going to be pleased when we have our reopening, which is optimistically going to be this month. But, you know, everything is subject to change and usually does.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you understand. I liked it. It was really good. And I could really relate to it. Like I said in the one email, boy, I love that sentence about as a kid, you were a mixture of smells, and it was back, clean, off, and copper tone. And wow, that just brought me right back. That was, we might be similar ages. I don't know. I was born in 73. How about you, Pete?
Well, you're so very gracious. I was, I tell people when they ask me how old I am, I say I graduated my senior year.
Okay.
Good.
But I was born in 65. Okay. And Evelyn, I have a special, and I love Crystal Falls. I've been there many, many times. And it's kind of funny because I made a documentary about Crystal Falls back in about 2009 or 2010, just on a whim. It's never been released. You probably know, I'm sure you know a lot of the people that were in it, and it was very impromptu. But it's just one of those things that I never finished. And I don't know. I just, I need some more drive to finish the things that I need to do. Patrick Leonard, do you know Patrick Leonard?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a great interest in it. We talked about it and stuff, and it just wasn't a good time in my life to finish it. But one of these days, hopefully, I will.
Well, and if you need some help, I'm also good friends with a boy that made documentary about Crystal Falls and the humongous fungus that we have here.
Oh, yeah.
And he's always doing documentary work. So I could probably hook you two up if you get inspired tonight by us here in Crystal Falls and you want to finish that documentary.
Yep. And I see that the Ben Franklin was sold.
Yes.
Being renovated.
Very
Very
cool.
cool.
They're right next to us.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have come on in the call and I'm glad you did. And I'll introduce Pete in a minute, but what we always do at the beginning is Victor talks to us a little bit about UPPAA events. Would you like to, Victor, tell us anything that's going on with you guys? Our co-sponsor.
Lots of exciting things going on. My name is Victor Volkman. I am the current president of the Upper Peninsula Publishers and Authors Association, or UPPAA for short. And you have just 29 days to get your act together and send us something for the UP Reader. Volume number 9 is closing on November 10th at midnight with no exceptions. To submit your work, you just have to join UPPAA as a member. Head on over to UPPAA.org. That's UPPAA.org. And for the low price of $40 a year, you are able to submit work to UP Reader. You can attend our amazing spring conference on May 17th, 2025 for the low price of absolutely nothing. It's included with your membership. We're going to have Michael Carrier, the man who's written 18 novels of mystery and suspense, mostly centered in the UP. He's going to be our keynote speaker. We got something for every kind of literature, no matter what you like to write. We want you to be there. Even if you're just thinking about being a writer, come on, join UPPAA and meet us in Marquette on May 17th, 2025. We'll also be having, once again, the Young Writer Storytelling Workshop. We are really stoked about this. The kids had such a good time. And if you have a niece, nephew, son, daughter, who's anywhere between grades 5 and 12 in the UP, find out if they'd like to come to the Young Writer Storytelling Workshop, also held on the very same day, May 17th, 2025. All right, take it away, Evelyn.
Yeah, and really, it was so fun. Last year, I took some high school kids, and another clerk, Joe. We packed the car with 3 high school kids and we went over to the workshops that day and we all had a great time. It was really fun. So maybe that'll inspire some of you writers out there or would-be writers. Okay, so Pete, who wrote a very nice book here called A Nostalgic Lens, Photographs and Essays from Michigan's Upper Peninsula, is going to be talking to us a little bit about this nice little coffee table book of, memories and nostalgia about the UP and when he visited as a kid and since he's moved up here. So thank you very much, Pete, for the book and talk to us.
Yeah, I was just setting my timer here.
Okay.
But feel free to interrupt. Okay. So a lot of what I want to talk about is also going to be complemented with photographs. And so I'm going to defer to my right hand Victor to make sure that I'm able to launch my PowerPoint correctly to show these things to you, because I kind of began that way. I started taking photographs of the UP long before I ever started writing about the UP, and if it wasn't for my brother who put a camera in my hands, I never would have started doing what I was doing.
There it is.
And hey, the big boy, there's my brother right there, Steve Wurdock. All right, so Victor,
Go ahead and hit the green share button in the lower middle part of your screen.
Middle part, okay, because I'm on the okay, so I'm going share, I'm going entire. No,
Yeah.
I'm going, say again.
You can share the entire screen or a window, it doesn't for you.
Okay,
All right, we're seeing it.
let's see, there we go.
Yeah, it looks good. We can see it.
Okay, I am sharing I should just be able to control this on my own here.
Indeed.
Let me know when you see it change. There we go. Have you ever seen a better looking guy with two better looking dogs? And again, my dogs. There's a lot about my dogs in this. You know, somebody called this book kind of a memoir. And in a way, it really was. One of the things, though, is that people don't realize when we talk about the UP is that state of Michigan was awarded the UP as a consolation prize after the Toledo War. This is like in 1833. And it was a political boundary war that no troops, no bloodshed. Very young governor at the time, Stevens Mason. He was like 23 years old. So when Michigan became the 26th state in the Union, we didn't lay claim to the Toledo Strip. Instead, it was awarded to us as a compromise. Never his intention, Governor Mason. Thank you very much. We ended up with a great bit of land. So I can put this very simply. My love for the UP and the way that I started writing it, it all began with a sneeze. That's what I mean, a sneeze. And it started with a man named Dr. Albert Carlson, who was a dentist. Prior to being a dentist, he was one of six people in the United States Army who survived. He was in the observation corps in the final drive that ended the war, the Mussy-Argonne. After his honorable discharge, he returned to Illinois, started his practice, had hay fever. A friend of his said, Albert, you got to go to the UP because you'll be free of hay fever. That doesn't happen up there. So fortunately, he did. This is an original picture. This is from like the late 1930s when the construction of his cabin started being built. And somehow through the luck of fortune, which you'll hear about, I became part of this family. What was going on in Deer Park at the time was the logging era. The narrow gauge railroads that surrounded Deer Park. My brother and my father, we explored those with our Conquistador metal detector in the 70s. And we found stuff, and it was just so awesome to be there. But this little community of Deer Park was interesting because here we go. The first mill in Deer Park. That Deer Park was Muskellonge Lake rather was known as the holding pond. They would lug all these timbers into the lake via small gauge railroad, and they would soften the wood right there in the lake. And it took a long time. It wasn't easy. But that mill ended up just being extremely productive. These guys here, okay, when Papa was a dentist in Lombard, he didn't turn anybody down. If you needed dental work, you got it done. If you needed anything, you got it done. And people would pay him with chickens, with eggs, with anything they could possibly pay him with, because, this is the Depression era. And what happened after a while, once Papa discovered this area, word got out that, hey, he wants to build a cabin. And what happened was these guys, these gentlemen, too proud to beg, and came up and they helped him build the cabin. They weren't his indentured servants. He wasn't asking them to work off their debt. They wanted to come up. They wanted to regain their dignity. They wanted to say, hey, things are square. And this is what they built. This was the late 1930s. They slept in tents, they bathed in the lake. And then Papa ended up having, 3 beautiful kids in his family that I'll get to in a bit, how my family got relayed to him. This is yours truly at Muskellonge Lake. The way I put it in my book was like this: every day we are alive, it's a memory in the making. Traditions are timeless. That's why they remain a special part of our lives. Our lives have changed and in many ways have been buffeted by the passage of time. But we all have special places where time has been suspended, places we can return to in our roots that are deep in our recollections, that are clear and comforting. These are places that take us back and give us something to hold on to in this slippery world that we live in. I felt excitement and hesitation when I decided to move to the UP, because I knew I'd be delving into the deeper silences of my own world. After my dad passed in 2015, my family's life changed. When Mom passed in 2020, our lives kind of went off the rails. I was taking care of her during the final months of Alzheimer's. And during that time, I moved out of my house. I lived with her 24/7. Did what I needed to do with the help with support of my family. So at the end of it all, 2020 comes, we're in COVID. My house was rented. I couldn't, with good conscience, kick the people out. So I'm like, I'm going to try small town life. So I did. Newberry was an area that I've known because of the way that our families have traversed there our entire lives, going back, to the 50s, specifically with our family. And this is Nita. I felt a sense of relief when I reached the Mackinac Bridge with her, because she was like, hey, this is going to be okay. These are greyhounds that have as much body fat as their owner, which is pretty minimal. If you've ever seen me in person, just kidding. I didn't have a place to live. Everything fell into place. This was my desk. This is where I lived for the first many months, in front of Muskellonge Lake. That was my view. Lake Superior was 300 yards behind me. I had more, there were more animals outside than I had neighbors. And it jump-started my writing again, which hadn't happened in a very long time. The first time I took my dogs to town, this is this is kind of funny. The town of Newberry, which is very small, as some of you may or may not know. So I'm walking down, through Newberry, and I'm passing Timber Charlie's, a very popular place. And the waitress there said, hey, you look tired. Can I get you something? And I'm like, sure. Give me a Miller Lite. And she looks down at him and says, what about you? And there was a pause, and he said, I'll take water with lemon in a bowl. And the waitress said, wait a minute, you're a talking dog? You should join the circus. At which point he looked back at her and he said, what? You mean they're employing electricians at the circus? These are my parents. Their first car. They were the connectivity to getting up here in the UP. My mother went to a women's college in Wisconsin, or in Illinois, McMurray College. There she met one of the aforementioned kids of Albert Carlson, Papa. Mom and Ray remained best friends for life. They were stuck as 4 years as roommates, but it didn't matter. They were best friends for life. And what happened was when Ray got married and invited, my folks who weren't yet married, they got there, and my dad and Ron, the guy in the upper left, they were wearing the exact same outfit, exact same suit coat, tie, everything. They were best friends for life. This was at a time when obviously the UP, or the Mackinac Bridge, was not complete. There were times, as I'm sure a lot of people know, where you'd line up for crossing. You'd head off to these little shacks at the side of the road, and then people would kind of come out and they'd move their cars eventually, and up and up. And that's what it took to get into the UP until the bridge opened. The day that the bridge opened, the cars, all the ferries went out of business. My dad and my brother, my parents have always been great about documenting our lives, and we're so grateful for that. That's the first picture of my dad and I. That's me cheering on the UP. It's like, come on. I had no idea the way that my life would go. So fast forward to 2008, I wrote my first poetry book. Why did I write a poetry book? Because I heard that if you were a poet, somebody shared with me the secret about becoming a millionaire writing a book of poetry. They said, if you want to make $1 million as a poet, you start with 2 million. So I did. And here's a little selection. This is called Hawk. I found a hawk's feather that helped steer him toward the shelf clouds of a storm that he saw before I felt. He scanned the horizon looking for something to fill his gullet and grazed upon the water, picking up a free lunch. From high atop a dead jack pine, he jumped into the thick wind and flew past the bone-dry boathouse that's been rotting for years, but holds powerful memories for those who still drive by. The boats on the shore still defy rust, and live bait is no longer sold, and campers have found another place to go and take family photos, where just yesterday, a young boy in the campground found a feather that once steered a hawk as he flew. I told you I love dogs. This is Sparky. It's called Battle Cry. With an open marble box, I waded through the shallows to scatter you into the lake you loved. Small handfuls of ash hit the water, and the sun turned the lake bottom to gold as tiny bits of you disappeared, leaving a trail like light from a falling star. Through the water, I saw footprints, unmistakably yours, from the summer before. They were still on the bottom, and they were undisturbed. In your life, you were not shy with your mighty battle cry. But I lost the fight that day and filled the lake with a salty stream of rain. Things so hard to part with. I can hear it all if I try. The high winds in the trees, the water lapping against the aluminum boat. with an occasional soft thud as it bumps against the dock. I hear the echoed slap of the wooden screen door, the crackle of the fire, the melodic call of the loon, the twigs snapping underfoot as we walked along the path, the tea kettle whistling, dry moss crunching, scratchy big band music on the Victrola, the distant sound of an outboard motor after hearing the faint rumble of a storm sneaking in from the west. I can also hear the years ticking like a Timex. Today it hasn't changed, but life has come close to a close for some of those we love so dearly. The time is traceable through the heart's pathways to what has now become the long ago. So I got an idea to write some short stories, and I wrote them. I'll give you a couple quick excerpts. How we doing on time here?
Good. You got time.
All right. Bending Water and Stories Nearby. This is a collection, centrals that really focuses, if you looked at the Paradise, Grand Marais, Newberry, Deer Park area. This is called Bending Water. Joe stumbled around the Lake Superior State Forest, disoriented and looking for his way out of a lightless cedar swamp. He was a few hundred yards from the Two-Hearted River, heading westward, but unsure of his location. He knew he was going back into shock and looking for the dirt road he knew would eventually wind out to County Road 407, which would get him away from this nightmare that he'd just seen. It was his best friend drowning, and there was nothing he could do about it. Eventually, he ran into some early season mushroom hunters. Lucky for him, they were freelancing off the two tracks many people used to explore the woods. The shroomers took him to Pine Stump Junction, the closest thing to civilization. As he walked into the tavern, the brass cowbell clattered on the door behind him. The proprietor came out of the kitchen. Joe was leaning against the door of the bar, trying to catch his breath. It just took a few minutes and broken, choppy sentences for him to explain what had happened to his friend. Ted served Joe his first legal beer during the bow season when he turned 21 and killed a 10-point buck coming down Coast Guard Road in the wrong direction. But this day held no excitement of the good memories of that hunt, none of the exhilaration of dropping your first deer or having your first legal beer. This day was sad. Joe found it impossible to summon any fond memories other than as bleak facts, shorn of worn fuzzies, as he continued and calmly as he could tell the details of what had happened to his friend on the river, and that day changed the trajectory of his life. That's just the beginning of the short story. Southern gales and tattered sails. Jennifer rolled up her blue jeans as high as they could go before she waded into the clear, frigid water of Lake Superior. Each step on the rocky bottom was an awkward and uncomfortable with the tips of her long hair touching the surface of the rolling water as she leaned over to pick up a floating bottle. She'd been watching it bobbing in the water for more than an hour. The bottle began receding, and the undercurrent had taken it away. Her curiosity propelled her into the water to capture it. As she snatched it from the surface, she noticed the bottle had algae and sediment in the buildup. She felt her heart race when she saw a rolled piece of paper inside. Jennifer walked back to the shore with the bottle in hand and sat down. She nestled into the warm sand near a large pile of driftwood to block the wind. She used a stick to carefully tease the rolled piece of paper through the mouth of the bottle. It was tied with a small piece of twine in a neat bow. The inside of the bottle smelled like an old library book. The paper felt brittle to the touch, but it was preserved. She trembled as she unrolled it, smiled when it didn't crumble, and then she saw the writing on the paper. It was a real message in a bottle. She was beaming as she began to read. This is the beginning of a piece called Last Night. Papa laughed at his son's absurd attempt at being relevant. That's okay, kiddo. I'm sorry for snapping at you. When you're my age, you'll understand this weird things that happens. One day you're accepting your age, and the next day everything at your back creeps upon you, taking a residence on your shoulders. All of a sudden, you wish you could have taken a mulligan on the first 40 years of your life. But by then, too much has happened. So you begin living the next 40, hoping you'll do a better job. And if you're still alive after that, you start on the next 40, even though you know you'll never make it. Hell, you know that'll never work. Everybody should know that. After all, life will kill you. This is the last bit here from the short story. I forgot what it's called. Denny shook his head and looked out the window. You're probably not old enough to remember what happened here in the 50s, he said to the boy. But in 1953, Calumet was home to an aircraft control and warning squadron for the Air Force. There was what they called an identified target sighted over the Sioux Locks, and they scrambled an F-89 Scorpion from Kinross to chase it. This went on for several minutes as the controllers followed two blips on the radar. Then, unexpectedly, they changed course and were coming toward each other. Instead of the blips crossing, they became one and disappeared. The plane was never found, and there was no explanation as to what the object ever was. That's a part of nonfiction that I wove into this story. There have always been theories of strange magnetic time continuums, radio transmissions that were harmonic signals bounced off the ionosphere and absorbed into space, which have bounced around only to be heard decades later. There have been rogue waves and high seas that swallowed ships whole when the weather was fine. And of course, there's the Great Lakes Triangle. Here we are, a nostalgic lens. Tiger Jack and Nita loved our hideaway. The road I lived on saw a lot of traffic in the summer, but a fair share in the winter too. When I was there, I could have made a fortune selling maps to snowmobilers who were asking for directions from Grand Marais to Munising or anywhere in the basic area. What I loved the most was the look on their faces when I would tell them, or ask them rather, you brought your passport, didn't you? And the looks that I would get were jaw-dropping. Maybe I'll go back next winter and sell them those maps. I'm not sure. One of the and these are here, you just got to look at that. For dogs that have no hair and no fat, they loved winter. They absolutely loved being out there. High Stump Junction, has anybody been there? I write for the Newberry News, and I write a lot about people who are doing interesting things. And I was out there last weekend. It doesn't look like this anymore. This is like the old days. But how it started was in the late 1800s, because these post offices were usually inside of a saloon or an unmanned office. And that's where rural free delivery, RFD, was implemented. There was a huge box by a pine stump that was attached, and the mail arrived through Newberry and was left in the box to be picked up, but people distributed it through camps along the way. But what I wonder about is how many people, how many lovers, how many young men and women were trying to court each other and never had a chance to because some unscrupulous person took the male that wasn't theirs. I don't know. It's a story for another time. In the 60s and 70s, the resorts and attractions such as this, everybody would have sign-in books. There I am with my family. And I know we were there in the 70s. Couldn't find the books at the time. But it was a fun thing for families to do. When I was still up in Deer Park, I had my Helicrafter shortwave radio. I could plug it in and I could hear hockey games from the east to the west coast of Canada and so much through the United States. I would hear them in French, Canadian, English on 2 different stations at the same time. And sometimes listening to these broadcasts was the only interaction I had with the human voice other than when I talked to my dogs. When I got to the UP a few years prior, well, and even as I was there, I lost several close friends to the end of their life and to strokes and to things that were just heartbreaking. Lake Superior became a giant puzzle that no one on earth could put back together. When I looked down from that bluff, I could relate to the feeling of brokenness because of the recent losses. And if Lake Superior was a heart, that would have been mine at that moment. I mentioned before how my dad and my brother and I would traverse along the Deer Park and Peninsula railroads with the conquistador metal detector, and we would find interesting things like this. We would find train parts, and we would find the train spikes, but every once in a while something like this would come along. And it took 30 years for me to find out that this was called a reach plate. And the reach plate was part of a covered wagon. And back in that era from Deer Park, you could catch the opposition stage line. It departed from Deer Park at 7 a.m. and arrived in Newberry at 4 p.m. Oh my gosh, Nita, Lou, and I in Grand Marais, we would go there just for a break in the action. She was such a pretty dog. People would come up and see her and want to talk to her. Many people in the UP have never seen a greyhound. And now that I'm on my 4th, I love sharing the beauty of them with these people as I see them. Grand Marais, though, was an era during the era of like 1890 to 1905. It was booming. It was full of people, saloons, hotels. There were 3,000 people that lived in Grand Marais. So if you've ever been there recently, there's like 250 year-round people who live there. So leaving my fortress to head out there and get a bit of the past was just beautiful, and I loved it. Oh, this is one of my favorite shots. We were just west of the bay, washed over by the distant glow of the light at Whitefish Point. A new moon left a stripe on the water all the way across Lake Superior as banks of black clouds lifted and the sky opened up. We found comfort in the shelter we made out of driftwood and watched the giant ore freighters, lit like moving bridges, as they punched holes in the skyline on their way to Sault Ste. Marie. They'd appear on the horizon and out of nowhere and vanish on their own terms. As the light from ancient stars illuminated the sky, in a way that I have never seen before and never will again. So much of life is noise. Most of it is of our own making. Most of modern humanity worries what will happen if they take the risk to see for themselves where the noise stops. And the Upper Peninsula has been that place for me to plumb the thoughts and ideas that I've always wanted to explore. While studying and reading the great Jim Harrison, I just what he taught me was the dedication to awareness that a writer must have. This is my Jim Harrison poem. It's called Wondrous Stories. And this is taken inside the Dune Saloon, which is now known as something a little different. My literary hero walked here. He sat close to the back door, sipping whiskey until someone turned a peaceful night into an awkward moment, forcing a quick getaway. He'd walk back to his cabin in the pitch black air. I dream of the stories that came to him, but in his books were never revealed. Brown Dog and Sundog, I know them well. And all the food, the raw, the cooked, and the succulent, I have enjoyed with fistfuls of garlic. Now, I walk between the cabins as midnight swirls above, and imagine the beast that God forgot to invent. It's there I fall hopelessly in love, dreaming of a woman lit by fireflies. That's my daddy-o. Without whom, oh my gosh, catching those lunkers down in Muskellunge Lake. This I always think of as a fascinating bit of history that is still around. During one of my evenings walk when I lived in Deer Park, one of my greyhounds led me off the trail. That was Tiger Jack Burke. And we went up and we went to this, we called this tree Big Betty. And Big Betty was the last of the great white pines from that storied logging area. And it's the only thing that remains of that old growth. The circumference of this tree at the base 240 inches, chest high 216, which basically means in terms of age, it was approximately 330 to 400 years old. Wow. That's a hard one to digest. Oh, and my brother. Fishing with him, oh my gosh. It's always been an important part of our life. Here he would try to bring in the lunkers. But you know what? When he didn't succeed, he would never complain about it. This is one of my favorite shots. It actually was the first Celebrate Michigan photo contest winner. I was number one. But it reminds me of the things that we need to think about, which is summer. Summertime, you are a tease. You cracked a smile and won our hearts on Memorial Day as we crossed the Mackinac Bridge. And when we thought we had we had it made. But by the 4th of July, we were skin to skin with you on a golden beach, testing the water with our toes. Summer, at the cabin, we could feel your silence as midnight left the woods and the lake became calm and flat like glass. The Milky Way split the night.
Oh, no, not again.
And the light of falling stars took our breath away as we wished upon them. Summer, you helped us remember the innocence of youth as fragile clots of fireflies gathered in slow-moving swarms as they lit the yards and campgrounds. I'd catch them and I'd put them in an empty peanut butter jar with holes punched into the lid while placing grass inside, giving them something to eat. Summer, some of your sunsets were so beautiful we couldn't find the words to describe them.
That was the summer we tried to catch 100.
Yep. Summer, your open skies allowed faraway AM radio stations to serenade us with the Beach Boys, with Sam Cooke, Motown, Brown Eyed Girl, and the lovely and lonely Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song. Summer, we hear your closing, clinging murmur, and we see you drifting away. Please leave us slowly. The rogue leaves currently on the lawn make us feel like we hardly got to know you. So inside the cabin, bologna sandwiches and orange crush fueled our afternoons. Reese's peanut butter cups and bit of honey candy bars that we bought from the old Joe across the lake weren't just a purchase, they were part of an adventure since we had to take the boat to get there. We either smelled like Coppertone, Bactine, or off. Fishing was always good, and we all discovered the adolescent freedom in a 14-foot Alumacraft boat with a 5-horse outpower long before we could drive a car. Our clocks were set by the rumble of our stomachs, and our loving parents guided the day. We watched and waited and felt the new adolescent wonderment for the first and last and only time. That was the summer of 75. And in no time flat, our lives have moved from here to there. This takes me back to July in the 70s. I was with my dad and we were fishing. The lake looked very much like this. This is Muskellunge Lake. Is very thick with fog, and we fished, and the fishing was great. There was something that my dad told me about when the barometer reaches a certain point with fog, fish are going to bite, and they did. We were hauling them in like they were, Asian carp in a river. And then all of a sudden, the cloudy fog got us a little disoriented, at least to me. My dad didn't worry. I began to worry. Dad, do we know where we're going? No problem, he said. Well, we're fine. Do we have enough gas? I'm like 10 years old. What do I know? And he's like, we're fine. So as the visibility became harder, it was more difficult to figure where we were. Did we drift north, south, east, west? It was hard. And then we heard a sound, and we knew we were okay. And what we heard was my family, who had brought the old Brunswick Victrola down to the dock, placed it at the end, cranked it up, and we heard a John Philip Sousa march. Heard it in the distance. Da, 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 da. And our problem was over. It wasn't a problem for Dad. It was a worry for me. But I would reckon to guess that has not been duplicated anywhere in the world before. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. Dad and Ron, In the summer of 2014, they made it to the cabin not knowing it was going to be their last visit. They were 83 with health problems, and we made the best of the time that we had together, and they made the best of it too. And as we departed, I remember them finally saying, "I love you" to each other. These were two old hard-ass guys that had been best friends forever. So here's the way I sum it up. They could fix or build almost anything. They knew something about almost everything. They knew how to laugh. They loved their families. They were both veterans who served our country. They were amazing men who didn't mind being called old farts. They were best friends. They don't make them like that anymore. All right, when Tiger Jack left me, it was very crippling. Being away from family, being away from everybody, and being in UP where I didn't have a lot of, people supporting what was going on in my day-to-day life. So I said goodbye to Tiger Jack. I said hello to Petie. The way that it happened was very odd. After Tiger Jack passed, I called my greyhound group in Southeast Michigan, where I'm from, and said, I'm committed to the breed. If you have another, let me know. And 2 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was our president saying, "Pete, you're not going to believe where I am. I'm on my way from West Virginia with 2 new dogs. One of them is named Petie." So I want to make that clear to people that I'm not a narcissist. I did not name him after me. Nita loved it. Nita was my other elderly dog at the time. He bonded with her in an incredible way. And boy, was she beautiful. So after a while, Petie needed a friend. I found out about Meerah, and I was again relieved when she decided to get up from her slumber and suck in the air of the Upper Peninsula as we crossed the Mackinac Bridge. That's her doing that in real time, and it was a great relief. She's my number 4 greyhound. Just in terms of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Greyhounds are fascinating. Feel free to converse with me sometimes about them. And I love bragging with people in the UP saying, especially Newberry, where they see them, and letting them know that I have the fastest dogs in the UP. They don't drink Boone's Farm wine, but I'm getting ahead of myself here because that was taking place in the field next to the cabin. It's where flowers grew, where kids played, where fishermen told fibs, and we said goodbye to loved ones and spread their ashes. Field saw wiffle ball games, balloon tosses, and it's where teenage girls giggly on Boone's Farm talked about Bobby Sherman and David Cassidy. And I was there. I know it. Life was fun and easy. And it was so easy until our lives changed. When winter hit again in Newberry, this is what it looked like. We had the kind of snowfall you'd hope for on a Christmas morning. It consisted of flurries and coated the road. Fortunately, Newberry people of Newberry know that things aren't going to get done. Things are going to be shut down. That's just the way that it goes. We walked through the village. I had nothing new to report. But this is what's interesting. The next day I was talking to my neighbor, Daryl. And when I got home, he said, do you know that Petie has been chasing tourists on snowmobiles? And I'm like, what do you mean? And then Petie looked up at me and said, hey, Daryl's lying. I don't have a snowmobile. We actually covered this a little bit earlier when Sue Harrison mentioned that. And you can't, these kind of things, that go on here, they're as honest as a mirror. I love my dogs. I know we're trying to wrap up here, and I'm not going to keep going.
Ask them where they are. No.
But this night was interesting because there were no trains. I live very close to the train tracks, and this was like the end of summer. No trains, just a quiet village, a setting sun, and a sleepy dog. An earlier breeze teased me with the last of the lilacs as it passed my open window like a ghost. No passenger trains stop here anymore, and the station at Newberry has become another blur in the collective memory of the Upper Peninsula rail enthusiasts. Train activity remains busy, hauling lumber year-round, and I think it adds charm to where I live. This week, I heard on good authority there are 100 billion galaxies in the Milky Way, and that the Milky Way itself is only one of 100 billion galaxies. So I always like to encourage people to remember this fact when you start to feel self-important, because we all live on a pale blue dot.
10.
There are few things as beautiful as fall in the UP, as you know. One of nature's greatest beauty pageants has begun its third act, and it is the autumn of the Upper Peninsula. That's my money shot. That's the place I love. As it slowly unfolds, I'm reminded of the brevity of the performance, with colors in the trees, the thick, lush carpet of brilliant green ferns that line the forest have bowed their heads. No photography completely captures the patchwork of stories passed down, but rediscovering helps them to jog the memory and perpetuate the dreamy recollections. Watching life unfold in the forest or in a small town as the seasons change, I am unsure of it all. And I'm unsure of it, that it will leave me when I leave. The years do a number on us when we aren't expecting it. The cabin, the creeks, the lakes, the beaches, the discoveries, they've all become permanent snapshots in my memory, like taking pictures with yellowed edges through a nostalgic lens. during the last 3 years of my move to the UP, it's been a journey of faith that has always been tested. I guess it means that for now I am where I need to be. And I appreciate you guys letting me share my journey with you. Questions, comments, editorial feedbacks?
Well, just a big thank you, Pete. I mean, very nice presentation. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Pete, this book, oh my goodness, you have scattered through it what my husband calls wiselets. Wiselets. It's his own word. This is on page 51. In a small town like Newberry, the words on the marquee said it all. And those words are, Fred, you will always be missed.
Yeah.
And then the last sentence on the page, but sometimes saying it all is an understatement. Oh, my heart. Honestly, it's just.
Yeah, that's what he meant to this place.
And you know what? You have those kinds of statements scattered throughout the book. And if it wasn't such a beautiful book, I would have marked them, but it's so beautiful with photographs, I couldn't bear to put marks on it. So I didn't, but this is a gift. Thank you. As a almost lifelong UPPAA, I just thank you for it.
Nice for you to say that. I certainly appreciate it. And yeah, that's the whole thing. You know, this is the new way of life for me. This is the new place where I am. You know, there's times where, you know, I ask myself, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? There's no answer. I just enjoy continuing to do what I've done, which is, you know, reaching out to people in a meaningful way.
Yeah,
So
why don't you
sorry.
talk about your sister more?
Oh,
I'm sorry. What?
I said, why don't you talk about your sister more?
yeah.
Well, I have a sister. She is my favorite sister, and she is also my least favorite sister.
I think so.
Yes.
It's always good.
Yeah. She used to send me incredible food when I was here. And in fact, when I first got here, she sent me 2 of my favorite pizzas from my favorite pizza place. This is during COVID. And it cost her over $100 to send them. And they were gone in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But the memory still remains.
Nice.
Yes.
We got one question here, though. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say I like the part about the Jiffy Pop popcorn. I haven't thought about that for years. And the Chef Boyardee pizza they used to get in the box.
Oh yeah, that was right. The box
That was kind of a nice memory. I forgot about all that stuff, and that was. And another thing, where are your dogs now?
Well,
Where are you talking from? Are they close to you?
yes. Well, the Jiffy Pop you can still get. The Chef Boyardee they've changed their recipe over the years because now you need to add your own cheese instead of the cheese that they gave you originally. Because as a pizza connoisseur, I love their sauce. And oh my gosh, we'd make them both at the cabin. And
yeah, that's from the 1970s, I think.
yes, indeed.
Or before.
Yep. And yeah, as far as my dogs, since I've been here, it's been very rare that they've been more than 5 feet from me. Mm-hmm. My first 2 greyhounds that I mentioned earlier, when they passed away, when I was living in Deer Park, you know, right here, right there. my other two knuckleheads, they're right here as well. And they kind of, I don't know. They don't, can you see me on the screen at all?
Yes.
Yeah, we see you.
Okay. They are just the most fascinating breed. It's hard to say it without sounding biased, but they're the only dogs mentioned in the Bible. They have a physiological makeup that is unlike any other dog. They have a universal blood that can be accepted with any dog anywhere. So they're blood donors for millions of dogs. We call them the 45-mile-an-hour couch potatoes. They accelerate faster than a car. They're up to 45 miles an hour within 6 strides. I've had the great fortune of being able to find some of their races online, before they're retired. And I don't want to get confrontational or political, but please don't believe what you hear from places like PETA that tell you greyhounds are abused and not fed and all that kind of thing, because it's simply not true. These dogs are amazing. They love to run. I wish I could run them more. I just don't have a place to run them up here, which seems odd because in the Upper Peninsula, you'd think there's a lot of room, but there just isn't for me.
We have one more question, though.
Yes.
I know it's getting late, so I'm just going to kind of wrap up that part with the greyhounds. Horst Schmidt, do you want to ask your question?
Well, actually, I have a comment. I've read a lot of Jim Harrison's work, and listening to you tonight, I feel like I'm listening to a novel. You have all the characteristics of the way Jim writes, and when you're talking, and I just feel it's almost like a stream of consciousness. So I really appreciate what you did in terms of your poems and your narrative and the pictures. It's just wonderful. Thank you.
First, I'm humbled by you saying that. I'm no Jim Harrison. I will never be. In fact, I've stopped reading him because when I read him, I'm like, okay, I'm never going to be this good. Why? But then I keep coming back. And I have really immersed myself in his poetry over the last year. In addition to the novels and novellas, but the poetry especially. And oh my gosh, especially up here, it's just I run into people in Grand Marais who knew him, who interacted with him, and just a special guy, an immense talent. He had immortality within him.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, and thanks, Horst, for making that connection between the two authors. I haven't read Jim Harrison, but now I guess I know a little bit about what to expect if I do. I really want to thank your sister there for hanging in on the talk. There she is. And your brother as well, and everybody else. It was a long talk tonight, but it was a good one. So anything else we have to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, this is Steve here. I just Pete's brother.
Oh, there you are.
Pete, yeah, great job. I just wanted to add I actually saw Pete deliver this presentation over the summer up at the Erickson Center for Performing Arts. I think it was back in July. You know, it was a beautiful evening. We had about 50 people in attendance. There were numerous people from Newberry. The townspeople came in, and it was just a perfect evening. Great conversation, slideshow, sold a bunch of books, and everyone had a great time. So to see him again with this group here was even better. So good job. I'll listen to the podcast later. I enjoy all the independent writers out there, and I think it's great that you join together from time to time to share thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to come back every month. We're always doing a UP Notable book and Thursday nights, the second Thursday night at 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. And it's been a real pleasure, Pete. Thank you. I do look forward to reading more of your stuff. I will send out I always send out the recording. And then I write you all next month a little bit ahead of time to get us ready for Sue's book. So,
Yeah, that's going to be great.
yeah, it's going to be great. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody, and sweet dreams. Bye.
Right. Thank you so much.
You've been watching the UP Notable Books Club, brought to you by the Upper Peninsula Publisher and Authors Association. To join or for more information, please visit us at www.upaa.org or www.upnotable.com.